One of the values that I have, and have always had, is the visual attractiveness of the rural landscape. For the aesthetic attraction, for the ecological richness that was there, of the richness of the lives, of the richness of human activities. I grew up in an old New England manufacturing city. I was a city kid, and yet it was always in the back of my mind, thinking about the farm that I maybe one day may have and work. This was a homestead grant in the 1890s, and as we were here, people would come by and say, oh, I grew up here, or after the war we rented here, and we began to accumulate a lot of the stories of how this particular farm was populated. And there's some very touching stories of people who lived their lives here. And to be able to keep it that way and to keep that history and the memories, I think that's important.
When I was a kid, I drew a picture. I wanted a horse and seal farm. Before, this is young, 5-ish, I wanted a horse and seal farm. And the idea was that I wanted a farm that was mountains to the sea. And so when I moved here, it's exactly that picture I drew of the mountains to the sea. So part of that is like what made me go, it's just a magical place.
Melissa was an early caretaker here, and she was here at least 5 years or more. And at some point, Nate appeared.
Well, I think what sparked my interest in farming was a girl. And I didn't really come to agriculture from any background whatsoever. We got this unique opportunity to give people what they truly wanted, which is a locally produced, humanely raised meat product, which they weren't able to get somewhere else.
I want my food to be touched. I want it to be nurtured. I want it to be looked at, all those different things. And that only happens on a small scale. And so it's going to happen more if you're eating locally produced food. I studied farming at Evergreen. Pat was actually my faculty. I was 19, it was the early 90s, and all the family farmers lost their farms in the 80s, and so that's what we studied. And agriculture sounded like if you were a farmer, you could lose your family's farm, your kids wouldn't like you, you weren't leaving them a legacy or you weren't leaving them something.
I felt some obligation, because I teach agriculture, that the model that I was doing had to be economically viable too. And that's how you make a living off of a small 40-acre farm. You just layer the enterprises in ways that they complement each other so that the sum is so much greater than all the little separate parts.
She was so great about being a mentor. We were always talking and she was always sharing her experience. And the other thing is she really helped financially. She was helping you set up. She would run the capital for you, and then she'd take a very small percentage, and so she was really helping these operations.
Evergreen College is graduating all kinds of young people that are working on new types of farming, sustainable farming in small plots, and they're all over this community. But a lot of the farmland is gone.
Our rural economy is really important and to sustain, and that means that we have working lands.
Right now, this property could conceivably be divided up into 8 home lots and be sold off as McMansion view properties of the Puget Sound.
I mean, the pressures for growth are real, and we have to try to do it in a way that doesn't just absorb more and more good farmland into residential development.
Being a caretaker on a farm who was farming, I realized I am not going to be able to buy land, most likely, and farm the way I was farming here and the model I saw here without something like this in place.
There's no way in Thurston County, particularly in an area like this with waterfront, where farming could anywhere near support the land costs that a piece of property like this would entail.
A lot really do want to do, family-based, local, small farms, but they're going to need and do need community support to sustain those over time.
I think the land trusts have offered families in America the greatest opportunity possible. How to preserve a family farm or a family homestead or a family location that may be of value to the public in numerous ways, and to have that property protected forever.
The family model is morphing and changing, and maybe it's not your blood family that passes down the farm to you, and maybe you don't pass it down to your children. It's going to need to change. We know it is. We know we're going to need a lot more people in farming. Obviously, their parents and relatives aren't farmers.
Having Nate and Melissa take over the farm has been perfect. Melissa knows farming backwards and forwards. Nate knows the agricultural organic industry backwards and forwards. And more importantly, they're very social. And Oyster Bay Farm looks like it's becoming sort of the social center of the young farming group. I mean, that's nice. That is really nice. To see the farm used and enjoyed like that is really important.